Hi, this is Sally, and today I'm going to be showing you how to cut down a seat cushion. The gentleman brought 2 of these over for me to do, and I need to take a chunk off the front or the back. Actually, be the front because I've got to shape it. It's really a remake because I've got to alter the backs as well. I don't think there's anything new in this one because I've already shown you how to do box cushions, but I thought I would put this one together just in case. So let's get on with it. I've already started undoing it, and the piping is the way I don't like it, which is in the side border. The other thing is the fabric is rubberized on the back, and they have put this mesh on, which obviously when you sit down the air is compressed out of the foam and comes through here, and this goes over the top and hides it. If they didn't have this here, you'd end up sitting on a big bubble where the air can't get out. So that's that. I don't think there's anything apart from that to show you. So I'm going to very carefully undo the top and the bottom. What a boring task, but it will get done quite quickly. So I did end up taking all of these out. And the reason why is the tops were all kind of cut at an angle. What I did first was I found a line and I cut all the way across, and it ended up being more straight than I had thought possible. So I used that, and then I measured across the original cushion, which came to 25 inches, and I used the fold line as my guide and cut up 12.5 inches on the outside. So that's now 25 inches wide. I measured from top to bottom to give me the longest point, and then I rounded it to match the original as close as possible. Then I used one as my template for the other 3. So that's how I got my shaping, similar to the way I usually do it. And the bottom like that. Because this is rubberized, I am going to use my silicone spray like that underneath so that it doesn't get caught up, and then I am going to find my center on here. Now this is going to go further down than I would normally put it, but that's fine, and pop this on. The only awkward thing is this is going to be a very generous 1/2 inch, and I don't want to put a generous 1/2 inch in on the seat cushions. I am going to put this at my 1/2 inch mark, which I think is there, and line that up. Put it on the longest stitch and put a bit of silicone on the top too, because this needle goes through the top and will warm up, and I don't want it to get too warm. Now I'm going to just sew. No, I'm not going to sew, because what I really need to do is pull all of these threads out, and I forgot. I work on pulling these threads out as I go. So that's there. Line everything up and just sew like you would do normally. Just try to keep everything even, so pinch your bottom layer to the top layer so it doesn't walk. Now my only problem is this fabric here on top is walking, it's being pushed forward, so I'm going to have to pull that back as I sew. And you know what? The other one is actually rounded, the original, so I'm going to take a... Oops, so thick. It really doesn't want to be cut. So I'm going to do a couple more of these back, like this, and a couple forward. As I sew, I'm going to just put a small curve like that on here, and then just carry on going down. So all of this needs to come into the inside like that. The other one has rounded corners at the back end. I'd much rather try to keep it in keeping with that than to go all square and different, just in case there's a reason for it. Line all of that up again, make sure my loose threads are pulled through that way, and so keep the back of the border as flat as you can. Because this is rubberized, it really isn't going to want to do what I want it to do, but it's going to have to. There we go. It's just a little bit awkward, but it'll pull in. You can hold that down there and just twist it. I was just looking at this corner with all this fabric taken in here, including the extra fabric from here. I don't think my sewing machine is going to like going over it, so I'm going to open this up top and bottom and through here so that I can flip this over like that. I think I've opened it enough. I need to open, maybe not, maybe I've got it. I'm really worried that there is too much fabric in there, I'm going to cut it back on this side like this, underneath here and out, because the less my sewing machine has to go through for the shortest amount of time is the best policy. The other thing I'm going to do is, this seems to be a little bit wonky, so I'm going to straighten that out too, so I can see the markings on my sewing machine. I've just started to pull this round and realised that this has got caught up on something, got left behind totally, so I've got to undo that and start again. And I might not have to undo very much, but I'd much rather you know that I struggle occasionally too, because otherwise it all looks so easy and it's off-putting when somebody gets it right every time. I'm just going to undo these few stitches and then try again. So I've gone back about an inch and I'm going to come back round. Make sure that I've got all 3 layers pulled together. Now this piece I'm going to just cut. The other one's just there, so I'm going to cut that just over the stitch line because this is a thinner piece of fabric. But I am going to cut this back so it's not so bulky, because usually piping is done on an angle, so it's a little bit open, but that'll be fine. The other one went backwards, so it really wants to do the same thing again. And now I'm going to just bring that in line with the outside edge of my seat cushion and sew. Just make sure all the fabric goes through evenly, which at the moment, as I say, because of the rubberized backing, is a little bit awkward for me. If you feel you've missed a few stitches for any reason, go forward and then reverse over, because sometimes when you're pulling fabric to make sure it goes through, it might miss a stitch or two. And now I'm going to go down to the end. Just put my cut in to go around the front corner. I'm going to get to about there. I'm going to lift up the bottom. Usually I leave the bottom straight because it's usually the border, and turn the top, but it's the other way around today. Line that up and carry on going around the front edge, putting a little arc in it. Continuing to make sure these little threads aren't in there. So as I'm bringing it round the front, I had thought I might need to put little clips on it just to make sure that it arced around, but it seems to be doing the job on its own, so I'll just carry on going. I am going to finish a little further up than here, not much further, because when this side comes down I've got to join it somewhere along here, so I don't want to over stitch anything. I've folded this along the zip, putting this on the back and lining it up one corner to the other should give me where the center is. Pin that in place. I'm going to do it from this side for now, but I will take it out. Corner to the next point and pin that into place. That should hold everything where I need it. Now this has a label to it. It tells me that I shouldn't take it off, only the person who's bought it, so I'm going to pop that back in like that. Make sure it's even and sew that into place too. Still removing these blooming stitches. Now I'm going to work my way to this corner and round. For the bottom corner I'm just going to fold this in so that I've got my corner, and fold that across, which takes me to here, and this is where the corner is going to need to go in on this side. So I'm going to pre-pin that in. Looks like it's going to go in quite nicely, but I'll still pin it so that it holds where I want it to go, and it shouldn't walk. It's a little bit loose, but I think as I get there and pull all this stuff out which is on the border, pull all these stitches out that I don't need, I think it might stretch into place. That looks a bit better. Perfect. I'm also going to cut my seam allowance back so I can see what it is I'm doing. This ended up being more of a job than I had anticipated, but that sometimes happens. There we go. Pinch it all into place and sew. Now, like with every other sharp corner that you're going to turn, come into it, put your needle down and foot up and twist. Keeps everything in place. Yep, that's just where I want it. Put that down and start. I'm going to cut this back and then finish in the middle. So I sewed up so far. Started sewing here. I'm going to pull this out to about here and cut it out so it's nice and even for me to be working with. I've overcut it so I can cut it back. Undo the stitches quite a ways down to there, and the same on this side. I folded back this side of the seam so it's straight, and I'm going to mark down here. So this is where I'm going to cut all the way across. I'm lucky I can see the way the fabric was woven, so I'm just going to cut along the weave. If you can do that, you've got a straighter line to work with. Now, because this is the open end of the zip and I don't want to disturb it too much, I have a pin here holding the top and the bottom down together, and I also have a pin here holding this in together, so that should be locked into place as I mess with this and try to get this out. Remember to lock your zip into place if you are going to be taking anything out that might disturb it on the open end of your zip. You don't want to have to restart the zip if you can help it. Sometimes they're a pain in the butt to get back on. I'm going to line up the second side of the border with the zip border like this. Now on this particular cushion I had to sew the border and the zip both sides. There was some dirty marks on the front corner. There, forward and back. If I had done the sewing the same way as I had on the other seat cushion, which was to line it up centre back and then sew all the way around, then I would have had a dirty mark up the centre front, or just off the centre front, which I didn't want to do. So when people bring things to you, and if there's a mark, one point, actually that's something I forgot to do, is point out any dirty marks on the project that's going to be re-sewn, because sometimes clients try to put it on you and then get a reduction in the cost because you did it, and I forgot to do it. But I just have to hope that he's honest and recognises that there was a mess on it. Okay, so I've cut the piping to the seam allowance and fold that forward so there's not so much bulk in the seam. Fold that over, line that up, and I've gone back. No, I hadn't. I'd almost missed that. So make sure you go over your stitching. My stitching ended there. So I've gone back, lined everything up. Now when I get to this seam again, I will just realign everything for good measure, because it really wanted to go the other way. Line everything up, make sure everything's going where it wants to go or doesn't want to go, and so. Because there's a little bit of pressure there, I'm going to reverse and then forward. I'm going to do what I did before, which was to fold the corner across, make sure it's even. This is where my new corner has to go. Pop that to about there and pin it. Oh, that looks like it's going to go in nicely. If it walks, then I know I either have to pull the top or the bottom fabric. This foam is really awkward to cut. So all I'm doing is I'm going to run that along the front there where the stitch line was. Make sure it's equal, because this was actually cut a little bit narrower. And I am going to just draw the shape that I want. It's almost rubbery. It's really weird. But the thing is that I can't easily cut a narrow piece off the side, but it's forgiving enough that it will push in to the cushion. I mean, it's only an inch wider, which is odd because the other one was 1.5 inches wider, or nearly 2 inches wider. So one will be really squashed in and the other one not so squashed in. I've got this up here because I want to keep the dacron back. I'm going to hold this at right angles and cut. Now on one side I'm going to cut the dacron to follow the curve. It's a little bit over so that I can pull it into place if need be. It didn't come off with a really nice edge, which is fine. I'm going to fold the dacron up and that over, and then stitch just the front together like this. So basically the same stitch I usually do, which is a whip stitch. Push that up there and pull this down. The Dacron is really thick. It's actually a nice quality one. Shame the foam isn't a better quality, but that's one of those things. And I'm just going to push it all up and sew all the way across like this. Make sure it's nice and tight. This will hide any faults on the foam that I cut. Sometimes I'm not very straight when I'm cutting, but this just kept getting caught up, so it was quite a horrible mess. Thank you for joining me on this project. Sometimes an alteration on a pre-existing cover can be like I did, which was basically take everything apart and start again. If it had just been the front and I hadn't had to make the sides narrower, I would have just taken the fabric back so much, altered the front, and then brought the fabric round and joined it at that point on either side. Or actually just on one side. Or even taken it apart one end, altered the front, and then joined it like I did at the corner, depending on how it had been made. So just look at a remake and then work out how you can do it without struggling too much. This ended up having to be redone because the tops were squiffy, so if I'd made them round at the front they wouldn't have been square at the back, and because they weren't square at the back the front would have been rounded but maybe twisted. So as I say, when you look at a redo of making a cushion smaller, see how you can do it and the easiest way. Sometimes it would be better just to be given the fabric and start again. If you'd like to see more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be absolutely brilliant. And in the meantime, see you later. Take care. Ciao.